I'll never forget the sound of that crash. It was early Saturday morning. Birds were chirping, sunlight pouring through the blinds, and my wife and I were in the middle of setting up the nursery for our soon-to-arrive baby. Everything felt perfect. That is, until Karen showed up. Karen lived 2 houses down. The type who complained about everything. The color of our fence, the noise from our lawnmower, even the scent of the flowers in our garden. But that morning, she took things to a whole new level. As I was unpacking a new crib, I heard shouting outside. My wife peeked through the window and gasped. "She's in our yard again," she whispered. I ran out, and there she was, Karen, red-faced and furious, holding a piece of paper. "You can't build that nursery here!" she yelled, waving what looked like a printout of HOA rules. "This violates the neighborhood appearance code." I tried to reason with her, calmly explaining it was just a small, backyard addition for the baby, barely visible from the street. But she wasn't having it. She went on a full rant about property values, noise from future kids, and even aesthetic disruption. We ignored her and went back inside. That was our mistake. The next morning I woke up to the smell of smoke. I ran outside barefoot, and what I saw made my stomach drop. The nursery we had been building, the room we had poured our excitement and savings into, was destroyed. The wall was cracked, plants ripped out, and paint smeared everywhere with one word written across the wall in red: spray paint. Eyesore. I couldn't breathe. My wife burst into tears. The police arrived shortly after, and though they couldn't prove it immediately, every single neighbor knew who had done it: Karen. But Karen didn't seem scared. In fact, when the officers questioned her, she smirked. "You can't prove anything," she said. "Maybe your poor construction just fell apart." I wanted to scream, but instead, I decided something else. We were going to take this to court, and this time, Karen's arrogance would be her undoing. Little did I know, the way she'd react in that courtroom would leave everyone speechless. The court date was set 2 months later, but those 8 weeks felt like forever. Every time I drove past Karen's house, she'd stand in her window, arms folded, wearing that smug little smile. It was like she knew she'd get away with it. But what Karen didn't realize was that I wasn't sitting around waiting. I was documenting everything. Every text, every photo, every HOA complaint she'd filed, dozens of them over the past year. I even had security footage from the night the nursery was destroyed. At first it seemed useless. The footage was dark, grainy. But then, I noticed something. At 3:17 a.m., a shadow moved across the lawn. A woman in a bathrobe holding something long and metallic. Then a flash of red light, the spray paint. I froze the frame, zoomed in, and there it was. The reflection of Karen's porch light in the window behind her. Gotcha. When the day of the trial came, Karen arrived dressed like a movie star. Oversized sunglasses, pearl earrings, and that same air of superiority. She strutted into the courtroom like she owned it. "I have nothing to hide," she said loudly as she took her seat. Her lawyer tried to paint her as a victim. Miss Karen simply wanted to uphold the neighborhood's beauty standards, he argued. She would never vandalize property. The plaintiff is simply blaming her out of personal bias. Bias. The word made my fists clench. When it was my turn, I told the story. Everything from her yelling about rules to that awful morning when we found the nursery destroyed. Karen rolled her eyes the entire time, pretending to yawn when the judge wasn't looking. But then, it was time for the video. The courtroom went silent, the lights dimmed. The footage started playing. You could hear a faint gasp when the figure appeared on screen, creeping through my backyard. Then the spray paint, red letters forming that single word. "Can you identify this person?" the judge asked. I pointed. "Yes, Your Honor, that's her." All eyes turned to Karen. Her face went pale. She opened her mouth to speak, but no sound came out. For the first time since I'd met her, she looked scared. The judge leaned forward. "Ms. Karen, do you have anything to say for yourself?" Her lips trembled. She stammered something under her breath, then whispered, "That's not me." But everyone knew the truth. Karen's denial echoed through the courtroom like a hollow lie. "That's not me," she repeated, her voice trembling just enough to sound unsure. But the judge wasn't convinced, and neither was anyone else. Her lawyer quickly stood up, trying to recover. "Your Honor, the footage is inconclusive. It's dark. Anyone could have been there." I almost smiled. I'd been waiting for that. "Actually, Your Honor," I said, standing up, "there's more." The judge nodded. "Proceed." I pulled out a small envelope, the kind of evidence that changes everything. Inside were photos taken the next morning by our neighbor, Mrs. Green. She lived across the street and had one of those motion-triggered security cameras facing our yard. The images were clear, captured under her porch light. Photo 1, a woman in a white robe carrying a spray can. Photo 2, the same woman, stepping on a flower bed near our nursery. Photo 3, her face, unmistakable. Karen. The courtroom went silent again. Karen's lawyer's jaw dropped. Even the bailiff raised his eyebrows. The judge slowly leaned back. "Ms. Karen," he said, voice steady but firm. "Do you still wish to deny that this is you?" Karen's mouth opened, but no words came. Her lawyer whispered something to her, but she shook her head violently. Then suddenly she snapped. "This is ridiculous," she shouted. "That nursery was an eyesore. You people were ruining the whole neighborhood. Someone had to do something." The room erupted. Gasps filled the air as the judge banged the gavel. "Order! Order!" My heart was pounding. My wife squeezed my hand, tears in her eyes. Not from sadness this time, but relief. Karen had just confessed in front of everyone. The judge sighed deeply, glancing down at the destroyed nursery photos. The video stills, the spray-painted wall. "Ms. Karen," he said, "you have not only damaged private property but shown complete disregard for your neighbor's rights. I hope you understand the seriousness of your actions." Karen's face turned white. She looked around as if searching for someone to defend her, but everyone avoided her gaze. The same neighbors she used to gossip with were now whispering about her. The judge continued, "Given the evidence and your outburst, the court finds you guilty of property destruction and harassment. Sentencing will follow." Karen sank into her chair, defeated, hands trembling. The woman who had made our lives miserable for months now sat silent, eyes wet, staring at the floor. But we weren't done yet. What happened next, during sentencing, was something none of us saw coming. The day of the sentencing felt different. The courtroom was packed. Neighbors, reporters, even members of the HOA who had once taken Karen's side. Everyone wanted to see how it would end. Karen walked in slowly this time. No sunglasses, no pearls, no smug grin. Just a woman who looked like she hadn't slept in days. Her hair was messy, and her eyes were red and swollen. The confidence was gone. The judge began reading her sentence calmly, his tone steady and emotionless. "Ms. Karen, after reviewing the evidence and your own statements in court, you are hereby ordered to pay full restitution for the damages, a fine for vandalism, and to complete 200 hours of community service." Karen kept her head down, saying nothing. But then came the part that made everyone sit up. "In addition," the judge continued, "the court strongly recommends mandatory anger management counseling. You will also issue a written apology to your neighbors, which will be read aloud here, today." Karen's head snapped up. "What?" she whispered, her voice shaking. I can't." The judge's gaze was firm. "You will." The clerk handed her a sheet of paper. For a moment, she just stared at it. Then, hands trembling, she began to read. Her voice cracked as she spoke. "To my neighbors, I was wrong. You could have heard a pin drop. I let my frustration and jealousy control me. I thought your happiness somehow took away from mine. I shouldn't have destroyed what you built, and I'm sorry." Tears streamed down her face now. Real tears. Not the performative kind she used to use when she wanted sympathy. For the first time, Karen looked human. When she finished, the judge nodded solemnly. "Thank you, Ms. Karen. I hope this is a turning point for you." Outside the courtroom, reporters swarmed, trying to capture her reaction. But Karen didn't speak. She just walked past them silently, her head low, before disappearing into a waiting car. My wife and I stood there holding hands, finally breathing again. The nightmare was over. The nursery was gone, yes. But what Karen had destroyed in wood and paint, she had unintentionally rebuilt in something far greater. Peace. A few months later, our new nursery stood taller and stronger than before. Bright walls, green plants, and laughter that filled every corner. And across the street, Karen's house was quiet, curtains always drawn. Sometimes, I caught myself wondering if she ever looked our way. Maybe she did. Maybe she didn't. But one thing was certain. She'd never forget the day. Her own actions left an entire courtroom silent. What would you have done if Karen destroyed your property? Tell me in the comments, and make sure to like and subscribe for more real drama stories.